Hey everybody, once again I'm very excited to be working on the exercises rather than the actual lessons. I think these are more fun when it comes down to it. We got English to Greek here in exercise 35, so these are always a little bit more challenging. I picked the last five too, 6 to 10, because I thought those were also a little bit more challenging, a little bit more interesting, so let's have some fun with it. Flee from the village, citizens, for the enemy are pursuing. So apparently Shelmerdine likes to have, well, Shelmerdine doesn't have the spelling errors. That's my bad. Mea culpa. But here we have a plural. Well, what I'm getting at is that we need a plural thing here for the enemy, which I always think of as a singular word in English, but Shelmerdine and I differ on English. I never use shall either. I like to think I'm speaking English for the new millennium, but chances are it'll change a lot in the next 100 years, so I can't really affect that. But enemy anyway, hoi polemioi, this is what we're dealing with. The enemy are pursuing. So flee from the village. Well, what do we need here? What kind of mood is that? Well, that's a command, so that's clearly imperative. And then citizens, that's an important bit of the puzzle too, because that's not just imperative, it's imperative second person plural. That's a person, and then that's a plural. And then from the village, so we know how to do that. Citizens, we can do that. For the enemy are pursuing. That for is going to be new. Let's cross that bridge when we get there. Let's start by fleeing. Alright, so let's flee from the village. So what's that going to be? Well, felgo is the verb. I am fleeing, but now we need to make this a command. And remember, the nice thing about commands in the plural, for at least thematic verbs that we know so far, just looks like the second person plural. So flee, you are fleeing, or right now, you are fleeing, but it also means flee. And then from the village, it's apo, tes, komes. Then citizens, no O in the English, but we need to remember to add that in the Greek. O, politai. And then now we can kind of have a little bit of a break. This might be a chance, even though we don't have a semicolon in English right there, but to do this kind of raised dot in Greek, because we're going to start something else. For the enemy are pursuing. Now what was that for? That's gar in Greek, and that's post-positive, which means it needs to be the second word in the sentence. So we need the of the enemy to be first. So really it'll be, say, the for enemy in Greek, but that's fine. That's exactly what we want. So we just outlined how we're going to do the enemy, so let's do that and just leave space. So hoi polemioi, the enemy, for. And then this is not enclitic, that's nothing special. It's going to go grade before this other word. Hoi is unaffected. So hoigar polemioi, for the enemy are pursuing. So pursue, of course, is dioko, and this is present tense, so we just need to make this third person plural to agree with the hostile people, namely the enemy, are pursuing. And then end of the sentence, so we do add that new movable, and then have that accent over the omega. So theugete apotes komes opolitai, hoigar polemioi diokusin. Flee from the village, citizens, for the enemy are pursuing. That's good. I should have read that in some dramatic voice, but I was too focused on the grammar to miss the beauty. Speaking of beauty, let's do it. Some of the trees are beautiful, others are not. I often feel that way. I'm out in Utah as I'm doing this, and the aspen trees are just beautiful right now. It's just about, well, it's the first day of fall. Things are going really well for the beauty around here. Some of them are just kind of dead and brown leaves, so this certainly applies to Salt Lake City in mid-September. So let's talk about those beautiful trees first. Well, what are trees in the plural? They're going to be ta, and then dendra. Good. So, but then how do we say some of them, and then others? How do we have that some others expression in Greek? Because we don't really know dictionary entries for either. Well, we now know that this is done with the particles men and de. So let's leave that are beautiful for the future, and then we can do that de right here, and then we'll get to that not also pretty soon. So alright, so ta men, ta de, that's going to be our some, the trees, other, the trees, good. But now we need to do are beautiful. So what's our word for beautiful? That's kalos. In the nominative, masculine singular, but if we need neuter nominative plural, we'll have kala. So, well, it doesn't really matter what accent we have, just needs an accent. And then we need the verb, which will be, in this case, the enclitic asin. We can use that new movable maybe because we've got, well, it just comes with it. I guess that's the reason. Not movable, it's just asin. And then that will keep this an acute accent. So ta men dendor kala asin. Some of the trees are beautiful. Others, and then we need to say are not. Well, we don't need to repeat our verb. We can just leave that. We can gap that as we're gapping dendron. So really, this second bit's going to be really short because we're leaving out dendra and we're leaving out ac. We left that. We said it all in the front half. We don't need it here. So ta de. All right, I'm going to come back to something I did wrong here. Think about what I might have done wrong in the context of this sentence. And we'll get right back to it, but it doesn't matter for right now. Let's make this the are not, and that's done with oo. And then remember, at the end of a sentence, oo gets the acute accent. Tada oo. Great. What did I do wrong here? This is a good third-person plural. Pluralsin. That's what I'll do. Third pluralsin. What's wrong with Tom? These are neuter plurals. That's great, right? Well, remember that all neuter nouns that are subjects, so all neuter subjects take singular verbs, whether they're singular or plural. So we still need third person, that was right, but we need singular. So that's going to be kala, and then that's going to be simply esti. And then again, that new is movable, and now that new actually is movable. So let's leave it in there because let's take a real pause there. Estin, comma, and then ta de u. Ta men dendra kala, or kala estin ta de u. Some of the trees are beautiful, others are not. Good. Speaking of good, I've got all the best transitions here. I'm not even trying. It must be subconscious. Be good, young men. Well, this is good. So what was this? I'm going to stop making myself laugh. This is imperative. That's the mood. And then we're going to have one of these predicate nominatives. You remember in the last lesson, we had the Greek sophos isti. Be wise. So now we just need to make this plural and then make it, plural and then good rather than wise. And then young men, we know how to do that with evocative. So good, what's good? Well, kalos also means good, but for our purposes right now, it's agathos is good in the masculine singular. We need masculine nominative, predicate nominative, plural. So agathoi. And then what's the form y'all be? It's the same as y'all are, which is este. But then these become accented when they become imperatives. So this is y'all be, which differs from y'all are, which is simply este and enclitic. So that's what we have. Y'all be good, you hear? And then now we need to say, O young men. So O and then neaniai. That'll do it. Agathoi este o neaniai. Be good, young man. Again, who's saying these things? Are they that good themselves? To be determined. The sailor wants to be either brave or wise. That's nice. He knows he can't have it all, so he's going to pick one. So the sailor, let's start off with the easy part. Ho nautes. Nice in the nominative accent there. Can stay acute because this is long. And then once. Well, what was that? That's that verb, athello. And this E right here is not the PIA. It's not the past indicative augment. It's just part of the verb. The sailor, that means I want. Let's make it he, she, it wants. Ethele. Honautes ethele. To be. Well, isn't that interesting? We need a infinitive. Cool. So what would that infinitive be? Well, there's no way to know, there's no way to build it off of our present stem of Amy, right? Well, in a way there is. Amy is not a thematic verb, but we're going to get ani to be our infinitive. To be or not to be is ani, or, well, now we could do that, right? Or not to be, we would use may, ani. That's how to do to be or not to be in Greek. But Greeks wouldn't actually express it that way, and why are we even bothering with Hamlet? Let's stay on task. Come on, Professor Al, let's do this. Honautes ethele, the sailor wants to be, wants, and then let me just put the be in there right now, ani, either brave or wise. This is interesting. What case are we going to use here? These are predicates, but now this ethele has opened up a kind of new clause. What do we put in? Well, the answer is still nominative because it's ultimately going back to that sailor. That's a good question. There's no reason for it. So to be, now let's make it either. So we need our first A, and then brave. What was that? Well, that was Andreos. And again, that's nominative. That works perfectly with nautes. First declension noun, but masculine with that ha. So to be either brave, and then let me continue on the sentence just right here, or, so either brave or wise. I mean, no wise. Sophos. So here's our sentence. Honautes, the sailor, wants ethele to be ani, either brave or wise. And Greek might do a couple things here. Let me make that clear. It could somehow gap that ani and just leave it out, but that would be fairly awkward. I think what we'd prefer to do is probably put that at the end of this phrase. The young man would wants either brave or wise to be. I think that would be the most natural Greek way of doing it, but for your lessons, you can put the ani wherever you want, so long as it's after ethele. Good. Last example. Can wrap up chapter 8, which is great. We're moving through. The horse is easy to catch, but difficult to train. So the horse, of course, will be a horse, of course, is hohipos. Another joke to be made there. Easy to catch. So, well, this is going to be interesting. I'm glad I started off with hohipos, but is that really the subject of the sentence? How are we going to do this? Well, the answer is yes, it really is the subject of the sentence. We're not saying it is easy to catch the horse, but that the horse is easy for the catching. This is complicated and a different sort of infinitive than you've come across. Again, in English, it's all the same, so you might think it doesn't matter, but this is going to be one of your favorite Greek grammar words. Epexegetical infinitive. And this is where we have some adjective like easy and then to blank. Easy for the blanking. Easy to catch, easy to stay. You make it difficult to breathe. This sort of epexegetical explains in what way this adjective is affecting. So this is actually complex grammar that, as often, Shelmerdine is saying, well, as long as you can get it, you'll work through it. And that's often true. So let's not fault Cynthia, and let's continue on and say, well, actually, this is a pretty good example. So the horse is easy. Let's start off there. So is will be SD, and then this is enclitic. Can we accent hippos? If so, it would be right here. Well, no, because this is acute, so we can't do anything. Ha hippos, SD, no accent. To catch. So, well, no, actually first, easy. So what's that going to be? Well, radios is the nominative masculine singular. Is that what we need here? Well, the answer is yes. We have the, how often does that happen, right? That we're actually able just to use the nominative masculine singular. Because halhipos is nominative masculine singular, and this has to agree. That's what esti does, it links. So we have all that linking in there. The horse is easy, and then now we're saying for the catch. I'm sorry, this little line marquee line has appeared. It's not going to affect us. So to catch. Well, that was a new verb, right? That was our lambano. So then we need to make this the infinitive, which is easy. Lambane. The horse is easy to catch, but difficult to train. So now we need a but. We could do this in a couple ways. We could do it with an adversative alla. That's probably good, but we might, let's try doing de. Let's see what de could do us here. Postpositive, difficult to train. So let's start off with difficult, and again it'll be kalapos, and then this agrees with hipos because it's nominative masculine singular. We don't need to do anything, which is a relief. Also, now we would need to repeat st, but we've learned that Greek can gap those sorts of things often, and at any rate, I said with that, but we need to put in a de. So now we have the postpositive. The horse is easy to catch, difficult, but it is, and then we need to train. And then that training is what? Paidewain. In the context of horse. In the context of humans, it's teach. Good. So the horse is easy to catch, but difficult to train. Have I missed something? Let's pause for a second. This is fine. Again, enclitic, but there's nothing we could do. This was the right case number gender. This is our nicely formed present active infinitive. We have our comma, post positive. Again, kalapos agrees with hipos. No, this looks great. But let's think about the meaning. We're saying that on the one hand, this happens, easy to catch but difficult to train. This is that sort of opposition, the kind of two different scales in balance that we've noticed before. I think what we need here is a men. And I think that men is going to need to go right in there, post-positive. The horse, on the one hand, is easy to capture, but difficult to train. We get that nice balance, that nice opposition that the Greek language is capable of doing. And again, we don't want to put on the one hand here, that really overdoes it. Men is lighter, it's more graceful, it's more elegant than that. Ha men hipos esti radios lambanein, kalapos de paidewain. The horse, on the one hand, is easy to take, to capture, to catch, but is difficult to train. Well, I hope you all aren't too difficult to train, to teach, and that this Greek lesson hasn't been too difficult to catch. That was pretty lame, but I had to do it. Hope it was useful. We did some tricky things. We've got a couple seconds. Let's review. Flee from the village, citizens, for the enemy are pursuing. We had this imperative second person that looks just like the present indicative active second person plural. From the village, nice genitive prepositional phrase. Nice vocative here. Nice use of gar. It's our first time doing that. For, this kind of causal relationship between phrase 1 and phrase 2. That's great. Some of the trees are beautiful, others are not. We have the some and others distinction that you do with the article and men and de in Greek. Notice that we also had a third person singular verb with our third person plural dendrakala because it's neuter. And neuter subjects, whatever their number, takes singular verbs. Be good, young men. A nice, again, a plural, and this had to come from the imperative second person plural of Amy, which we know to be este, accented. So agathoi este o neaniai, good. The sailor wants to be either brave or wise. I like this sentence, in part because it made us form the infinitive, present infinitive active of to be. And then also consider for these predicate what ended up being predicate nominatives, even in the subordinate clause, since they're ultimately referring back to ho nautes, they need to be nominative, singular, masculine, as Andreas and Sophos are. And then finally, the horse is easy to catch but difficult to train. This was a what kind of infinitive? Easy for the catching, easy to catch? Your favorite word, I'm sure it will be, a exegetical infinitive. An explaining infinitive. It explains in what way the adjective makes sense. So the horse is easy in the sense of catching, but difficult in the sense of training. These are both exegetical infinitives, and here we had some gapping. We had gapped the horse. We didn't need to repeat ho hippos. We also gapped a form of to be, as Greek is often wont to do. Well, that was excellent. See you in chapter 9. Take care, everybody.